You're traveling through another dimension, a dimension not only of sight and sound, but of mind. A journey into a wondrous land whose boundaries are that of imagination. That's a signpost up ahead. Your next stop, the Twilight Zone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Welcome to An Hour to Kill, a podcast where we take an hour of your time talking about horror and we transport it to another dimension. I'm your host, Dorian Adaholic Brown, and I'm joined once again by the immortal Damon DB Weathers. Damon, how's your summer going, man?
Is it summer? It's gloomy in LA for some reason, and it's been raining, and I'm depressed because I just found out I graduated high school today, 17 years ago.
Oh boy, we're old. Man, that is a thought that I don't like at all. And I'm
No,
just gonna
it was quite jarring on the drive home today.
yeah, that's scarier than anything we're gonna ever talk about on this podcast. So I'm just gonna move on. We also have a very special guest today, making his first ever appearance on the show. He has a wonderful podcast himself called Backlog Brain Rot that I highly recommend. It's the man himself, Parrot. Parrot, how are you doing, sir?
Hello, hello. Thanks for having me. I'm very excited to talk about one of my favorite shows with you too.
Yeah, it's great to have you on here, Parrot. It's funny when I originally came up with the concept for this show. I was really hoping that obviously Damon would be down for it. You know, we're talking horror, and I was like, man, I think you're gonna like this, and I hope you do it. But if he didn't, and if he refused, or if he just didn't have the time to do it, and he only could do it once in a while, my backup plan was to get you and Mac involved and kind of do episodes that way and kind of just cycle it off. So I'm still glad I'm able to get you guys involved. Thankfully, obviously Damon liked the idea, so we were able to roll with that too. But yeah, without any further ado, we're talking about the Twilight Zone today. One of, I think, the most influential shows of all time. Is it pure horror? Maybe not, but there's definitely a lot of very scary episodes on there. It's a lot of good sci-fi stuff, and there'd be a lot of stuff that would just not exist today if it wasn't for the Twilight Zone. I mean, anthologies in general were just, I don't know, it's just so influential for that sort of thing, and I'm really excited to get into this and talk about it. And yeah, we each picked our favorite Twilight Zone episode, and we're going to talk about it. So, generally, how we're going to do that is we're going to go in release order. Damon picked something from season one, Parrot picked something from season two, and then I picked something from season three. We're all going to tell our picks, kind of give some honorable mentions if we have them. And then, like usual, just dive right in and have 20 minutes to discuss it. 1 hour. So, Damon, let's throw it over to you first. Tell us what you picked and your honorable mentions if you have any.
Yeah. So mine is from season one. It was so hard. I tried to not go with anything from season one, but c'est la vie. Mine is season one, episode 9. The episode's called "Perchance to Dream," and it was released November 27th in 1959. And some of my honorable mentions that I had, just like I know you two, I had quite a few. Initially, One for the Angels was a big one that I wanted to do. And that's actually the second episode ever. One for the Angels, and When the Sky Was Opened. I almost even went Time Enough at Last, but I felt like that was a little too cliche because it's one of the more known episodes. And so when we started talking about it being horror, it's a horror podcast. So I wanted something that was a little scarier. And to me, When the Sky Was Opened and Perchance a Dream were the ones that I found to be terrifying, especially I leaned Perchance a Dream because of it has to do with dreaming and waking nightmares, and that shit's terrifying to me. So those were my honorable mentions, and that's what I ended up going with.
Perfect. Really solid choice there. Parrot, what did you pick?
So I also struggled. I whittled it down to like 15, and then I was ordering them and I was changing my order constantly, and then I narrowed it down to like 5 or 6. So it was kind of just a toss up at that point. So I ended up picking the episode 22 from season 2, episode 17, which aired February 10th, 1961. We'll get into the episode when we talk about it, but this was, for me, I think it is, if it was not the first, it is one of the first episodes I ever watched of the show. So I think that is what ended up squeaking out for me for my choice. But I had a couple honorable mentions I wanted to pit to I had a couple honorable mentions I wanted to shout out. The After Hours, the episode about the mannequins. That is one I always think about. Eye of the Beholder. To Serve a Man would have been my runner-up.
Oh yeah.
And then I just had to throw this in here. I almost picked it just because like Damon said, I didn't really want to pick one of the more famous episodes. So I also was very, very considering. I was very highly considering going a totally different route and going with the episode Mr. Dingle the Strong, which is just one of those crazy comedy episodes
Oh,
where
that
he
is that's
yes,
deep. That's a
yeah.
deep one.
Oh my god, I think about that episode all the time. So I almost chose that, but yes, like you said, it's a horror podcast, and Mr. Dingle may be strong, but that is not horror. So I ended up going with 22.
Yeah, we love our Mr. Dingle here at An Hour to Kill. Shout out, Mr. Dingle. And yeah, well, obviously, when you get deep cuts like that, you know you're at the right place for just truly expert opinion here on the Twilight Zone. So, but yeah, another great choice for sure in 22 for sure. My pick was It's a Good Life, the episode from season 3. I had, there was obviously many, many, many I definitely considered. Uh, and there's so many deep cuts you can go with, and so many classics. Some of the other ones I considered, I mean, these guys have already mentioned them, honestly, but Time Enough at Last is just such a classic. I feel like Nightmare at 20,000 Feet is just a tremendous episode, and probably why I'm partially scared of flying today. And then Eye of the Beholder as well is just such a great episode, and
Mm-hmm.
one of my favorite endings for sure. But I went with It's a Good Life, and we'll talk about that more when we get into the episode. But that's also one of the ones I think, like Parrot, I watched first and just sticks out a lot in my mind. And just for me, I always like the creepy stuff, and that
Mm-hmm.
one just gives me the GVs. So it does a good job at that.
Yeah, one of my early memories watching this show, I would always watch the New Year's Eve marathon, and that episode came on, and my little brother was watching it, and he was so stressed the whole time. And then the pig face showed up, and he just
Yes.
screamed. He screamed and ran upstairs to go hide in his bed. I'll never forget it.
Yeah, it's a great episode. it's there's like I said, there's just endless amount of selections. And by the way, I should mention anything was eligible here, but if anyone picked anything from Jordan Peele's run, they probably wouldn't have been invited on the show. So I'm,
Dang.
I'm very glad we didn't go that far with it. But
Still
yeah,
haven't seen any of those.
keep it that way. Trust me, keep it that way as long as you can. All right. So we're good to go now here. We're going to start the timer here pretty quick. Again, remember, we're going to spoil these episodes. So if you want to know them for yourself, I mean, they're 20 minutes each, 23 minutes each. Go watch them all and come back, and maybe you'll get lost in the Twilight Zone as well. Damon, you ready?
Let's do it.
Parrot, good to go?
Yep.
All right. So when I start the timer, I'll do a little bit of a countdown here, and then Damon, we're going to go right to you. So just start talking about your episode. All right. We're
All
going
right.
in 3, 2, 1, go.
All right. Perchance to Dream. Again, season 1, episode 9. Cool thing about this episode, actually, that I'll start off with is this was actually the first episode in the series, a whopping 7 or 8, 9 episodes in, that actually had the iconic Twilight Zone theme song playing ahead of it, which I never caught. I've seen the show in order so many times, and I guess I just never noticed that. But it is based upon a short story of the same name by Charles Beaumont, and it was actually published in a 1958 issue of Playboy magazine. So if anybody has that issue, let me know. I'd gladly buy it off you. But of course, for the story.
Yeah, that's
of
it.
course, of course.
For the articles. For the articles.
For the art. In this case, yeah, for the articles. But Perchance to Dream is about Edward Hall. He's a guy he's dying. He's either going to die from a heart condition that he has. He's overstressing himself. He hasn't slept in 87 hours. And he continues to have these episodic dreams about a woman named Maya, the Catwoman, as they call her, when he sees her in a carnival in one of his dreams. But the majority of the story takes place in a psychologist's office. This man relates his insane story to the psychologist. And as you go through it, there's just so many different layers to it. You kind of can't tell, is this a dream? Is this reality? What parts are dreams, what parts aren't. And even when you get to the end of it, and Rod Serling's going through his conclusion and foray into the story, he brings up the nature of dreams and how dreams may feel like an eternity, but they may have only lasted a second. And I remember seeing this episode in high school and being completely terrified because I've always had such a weird fascination, not only with dreaming and sleep, probably because I don't get enough of it, but the idea you ever wake up at like 3 in the morning, in the middle of the night, and then you fall back asleep, have a dream, wake up, and you think, man, it's got to be time to go to work or get up and do something, and you realize it's been 5 minutes, and that dream felt like it lasted for hours or even days or however long it was.
Hmm.
So that's always been just extremely terrifying to me. So when you're watching this episode and this man's stuck in this no-win situation, he hasn't slept in days, he's just completely tied up in knots. Um, and at the end, you're kind of not even sure what reality to believe in. But throughout the episode, there's one dream where he's, like I said, he's in a carnival and he meets this cat lady, and she just kind of beckons him to join her on one last ride, which he's certain will lead to his death. Since he has a bad heart, he just feels like another shock would kill him. So he can't go on this ride with her. He feels like she's intentionally trying to dupe him into going with her to kill him. Um, the mood of just menace and absolute dread that is conveyed in this, whether it's through visuals, it's really striking for a show from 58. Yes, it's in black and white, but the way it's shot, you have a lot of weird visuals in the carnival sequences with these clowns and these I don't want to call them carnies. What are they called when they work at at a carnival? I guess carnies. But these carnies are trying to lead him into either paying to play a game or do X, Y, and Z. And when Maya comes up, he's so infatuated because she's a beautiful woman, and so he initially does want to follow her, but as it keeps going and you start realizing she's trying to pull him into something, so he figures, if I don't sleep, I never have to deal with her. But therein lies the other problem. So you're back to that no-win situation, if you will. And of course, the psychologist is giving him the logical answers, right? Oh, you're having a delusion, or well, you haven't slept, so obviously you're hallucinating, or giving him any logical answer in the book that a doctor would give you. And one other thing I really want to highlight, sorry, kind of jumping all over the place, is the music in this also really just amps it up. And and you're kind of on the edge of your seat the whole time with him, because you're like, what the hell's going on? Is he really freaking out? Is this really going to happen? If he takes this last ride with her, does he never wake up? And then I start thinking about the influences that have taken from this over the years. Freddy Krueger. Maya is basically Freddy Krueger before except she's beautiful and voluptuous and equally as deadly, but better looking than Robert Englund. Sorry, dude.
Well, I
Uh,
don't know. He's pretty voluptuous too. Let's not
he's
get carried away.
it depends on the angle, I guess. But she's literally trying to scare him to death. Yeah, on this dark carnival ride full of just cheesy, nightmarish imagery and low rent thrills, if you will. And he's so terrified to fall asleep. And like I said, as a kid, probably a bad thing. I would watch unsolved mysteries and late night TV that would completely give me the same feeling. I would feel like if I went to sleep, something bad was going to happen. So I always tried to stay awake, and to my detriment, because as I've gotten older, my sleeping patterns suck. I never sleep. So I think that's why this was specifically so terrifying to me then, and even now. We talked about all these other episodes we wanted to pick, and like I said, I had a ton in mind, and they all resonate for certain reasons. But this one was because it just completely gives me the willies. And by the end of it all, he ends up. Oh yeah, we can spoil it. He ends up jumping out a window and dies. And then you cut to, just a few seconds later, and backtracking, he recognizes the receptionist at his psychologist's office as the woman he's been seeing in his dream that's trying to kill him, essentially, or trying to get him to take that ride with her so that it eventually shocks him enough to kill him. And the doctor opens his door, he calls his receptionist in, and they check his pulse. And the guy's Edward Hall is laying on the psychologist's couch. He's not out the window. The window's not broken, and he's dead. And he determines, he must have died from a heart attack in his sleep. And she asks how long he had been there, and he tells her, he laid down not 60 seconds ago, not a minute ago. And then, you cue the great Rod Serling conclusion, and he comes in talking about a dream can last an eternity, even if it was just a second or a minute for you in real time. And because of that ending monologue, I tend to think that as I've gotten older, I tend to think that, yeah, it was all in his head. The whole episode was in his head. It was a complete dream he was having when he sat on the couch. As I watched it in high school and several times up until this last time, I always thought, what if even that's a dream? I kept finding reasons to justify that theory, but I kind of don't subscribe to it anymore. But yeah, just everything from the visual, the way it's shot, the visual design. It's almost like German expressionism done in like 50s rural American vibe, and the music is so great. Edward Hall is fantastic. He's actually really really good. The woman that plays Maya is completely escaping me right now. Suzanne Lloyd. Thank you. Suzanne Lloyd. She's great. She's very magnetic. When she comes on the screen, you're kind of like, you're kind of wondering, oh man, who is this? And you're really kind of attracted to her, even not necessarily physically, but more just she has an aura to her. She has a presence to her that you really want to know what's going on. And especially for 58, her way her makeup's done, she's showing a little bit of thigh skin. It's definitely a different episode, and to me it feels like a quintessential Twilight Zone episode, simply because of the themes it's tackling and because of the effective twist ending that it has, that everybody is stolen from, from then till now. Yeah, you can quote M. Night. I mean, fucking Twisted Metal stole from this. If you've played any of the original games, all the endings have this exact twist style of ironic ending at the end. And it's just something that completely resonates, and I feel like has just kind of stood the test of time. But I mean, I don't know. I don't know how you guys like that episode, but I fucking love this episode.
Well, and it's funny. I'll pass it over to Parrot in a second here for his thoughts, but just to go off of something you said there about Maya specifically, one of my notes about her is, this cat girl and her whole look is probably pretty scandalous for the 60s at that
Oh
time in
yeah.
television.
Definitely.
Just to have that sort of thing going on. So I definitely thought she was an interesting character, and obviously today there's not much to her at all. But back then it was probably a lot more of a big deal, and just, ooh, how exotic. Like, of course she's trying to kill you, sort of thing. Well, today just perfectly normal. But yeah,
Oh yeah.
obviously but yeah, great episode, and I'll talk about it more in a minute. But Parrot, if you want to give us some of your thoughts, notes, and just overall general impressions of the episode.
Yeah, this is one that when Damon picked this, I looked at the picture and I remembered the scene from the carnival, but I really didn't remember this one very well. So it was pretty fun to watch it this morning. I really, you know, our two choices I'd seen a million times, Addie. But, this one I really sat down and really paid attention to so I could remember. And I really did think it was pretty interesting. My choice also has to do with dreams. So,
Yeah, I
we're
love
kind of on the
Yeah,
that.
same,
I
we're
was
kind of
like,
on the
that's
same
cool.
wavelength here.
Yeah, yeah, I noticed
So
that.
I really like that. And I do really enjoy the twist ending. That is a part of Twilight Zone that's always been the huge draw to me. So I feel like it's done really well here. And I was thinking of it as you were talking about the episode, but I did write down the quote that Rod Sterling says at the end. He says, "They say a dream takes only a second or so, and yet in that second, a man can live a lifetime," which I
It's
just
a good
think is
quote.
a super, super
It's
interesting
amazing.
idea to
Yeah.
build an episode around.
For sure. Dreams, I always find dream stuff really fascinating. Like, Inception is one of my favorite Christopher Nolan movies. And I think a big part of that is just the dreamscape in general, and just
Mhm.
how fascinating I find dreams and stuff like that. So when this episode and then Parrot's episode were both dream related, it was like, oh yeah, that's so cool. And definitely makes sense of why it's something they tackled pretty early on with the Twilight Zone is, even today it's still such a, weird thing we know nothing about. It's kind of wild.
Yeah, and there's some really cool scenes in the dream. I wanted to just talk about those really quickly. The the one scene where he's talking about when he was driving his car and he's so worried that this woman is going to appear in his car that she
Oh
does.
yeah.
I love that scene because when I was a kid, I
Very
always
creepy.
would just read the urban legend books, and that's just like one of the most famous urban legends. That there's someone hiding in your back seat, and
Oh
that is
yeah.
always just that's something I always think about. I still check my back seat every time I get in the car, even though I live out in rural nowhere. But I just think about that all the time. So that scene really made me think today. Oh, and then the other scene I wanted to quickly shout out was when they're in the haunted funhouse. That is like such a
Oh
cool
my
scene.
god.
like all the monster like masks are jumping out, and it's just like shot in such an interesting way, and like the laughing and the screaming behind it is really unsettling.
Oh yeah, all the like Dutch angles, right? Everything's from the side, and
Yeah.
then you get the cool swirly. What are those called? It's at the beginning of every Twilight Zone episode, also in the intro. But that,
Oh, like the little black hole swirls. I know what you mean, but
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. You get some of those, and
Yeah.
you. But to your point about how he's looking in the back of the car, or he's always just kind of he's looking over his shoulder, and he even says to himself, I know she's not going to show up. I know she's not there because she's not real. She's in my dreams. And he still sees her in the mirror. He still looks anyway. And that's how terrifying she is to him, is that he still feels like, even if he knows she's not real, he's got to keep looking. He's got to keep making sure, covering his ass.
Very, yeah, like you mentioned, very Freddy Krueger. I was curious about that because I thought of that too when I was watching this, and I was looking on the Wikipedia, and it says Wes Craven said it had nothing to do with it, but
Oh,
there is not a
really?
lot of similarities. Yeah, it says it's been speculated that this episode in the novella which spawned it served as Wes Craven's inspiration, but he's saying it did not. But I definitely got that vibe.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah, definitely some inspiration for sure. It feels like, but maybe Wes was getting up there. He didn't remember. Who knows? All right, we got 7 minutes left to discuss this episode. I wanted to. This is totally off topic and just something that I laughed at. But have any of you guys seen that Mario meme that's been going around with the whole essay and the perchance?
Oh, no. I'm
Or
looking
is
it
that
up
just
now.
me? That's why it just made me laugh. Like there's this essay that's going around that where this kid wrote an essay on Mario and the teacher's just fucking grilling him. But like the start of it is everyone knows Mario is cool as fuck, but who knows what he's thinking? Who knows why he crushes turtles? And why do we think about him as fondly as we think of the mythical Dr. Pepper?
Oh,
Perchance?
you
It's
can't just say perchance.
yeah. So it just made instantly when you picked this, I'm like, oh great, I'm just gonna be thinking about this the entire fucking time. But no, it's a great episode. The whole, like I said, I love dream stuff, so it's very fascinating for me. Definitely had a very creepy vibe to it, which is again exactly what I'm looking for in the Twilight Zone. And then this is maybe just a me thing, but there's something inherently creepy about amusement parks to me. I don't know what it is, but just carnies and like that whole thing. I just always feels like a little creepy when they use that in media and that they can make it can make a little bit creepy. So I dig that. One of the things I was laughing at though was, back in the 60s, I imagine that psychology, mental health, and all that stuff wasn't super advanced. So I don't blame the guy like for not wanting to tell his story. Like, even and then as I was typing that note out, he's like, "You're not going to put me in a straitjacket, doc, are you?" I'm like, "Yeah, well,
Oh, yeah.
probably will because we're in the 60s."
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like that is a
So,
theme that I feel like that is something that happens in so many Twilight Zone, as we'll talk
oh
about in
yeah,
my next episode. But
we'll
I mean,
talk about it in your episode
yeah,
for
Oh,
sure.
God,
always
absolutely.
something.
But
That's
yeah,
all.
there's some definitely 60s things in these episodes. So it's like, oh boy.
Yeah, I kind of I enjoy that. It makes it it dates it, but also makes it a little campy almost in a way. I just
Oh, yeah.
in that vein, I was thinking about just the very end. In the real world, he goes into the room, falls asleep, and dies in 3 seconds, and they do not act like they're surprised at all. They're just like, "Oh wow, he's dead." what
Yeah,
what a
they
shame! What a
they
shame!
even don't they even open up on the psychologist kind of just staring at him like,
Yeah,
is
Oh
he
shit,
dead?
this guy died.
Did this guy just
Damn.
die? Like he's not even sure. He's like, is he dead? Maybe. I'm just
you
gonna
know,
sit here for a second.
maybe you know what? I don't know. I wasn't there. Maybe that happened all the time in the '60s. Maybe
I'm
it
really
wasn't
pissed
weird.
because it's gonna be a ton of paperwork he's gonna deal with now.
Oh, right. Holy, you know what? Odd, holy shit! I didn't catch this because I watched. Dory and I watched yours the same night I watched mine, and
Right.
I didn't catch this, but John Larch is in both episodes. So the psychologist
Yeah.
in this episode
He's the dad.
is the dad in your
Yeah.
episode. I,
Yeah.
for some reason, went right over my head until about 5 seconds ago.
Yeah. I actually don't know how I'd have to go through and rewatch the whole series, but I imagine they reuse some of the actors quite a bit. Like it
Oh
feels like
yeah,
something they would do.
I
And
mean Shatner's in 2 episodes.
Yep.
yeah, you touched on this earlier too, Damon, and it'll be a prevailing theme when I talk about all these episodes. But the score is really good in all of these.
Oh,
Like,
it's so
I love
good.
the symphony and the little score they have cooked up for each episode, and I love that about old television, specifically '60s stuff. But it just sounds great what they do with it, and I really liked it.
Yeah, they use it to such good effect. And Grant, back then they didn't know that it was going to be this that people were going to be talking about this, 70 years later. And for it to be that effective and that timeless is man, you got to tip your hat. Rod Serling is not only is he a beast. I mean, the guy wrote so much, but if anybody ever gets a chance, there's a book that his daughter wrote about him called "As I Knew Him," and it's really good. Actually, oddly enough, just read it a couple of months ago before we picked this episode. And he's such a fascinating he's just a fascinating man. Being in the war and then coming home and doing the teleplay for every single episode and just completely burning himself out writing these episodes or overseeing them and doing the teleplay and even writing Who's Surprised, but he helped, if I understand correctly, Rod Serling did a pass on Planet of the Apes or helped do some of the ending. And if anybody knows Planet of the Apes, tell me that's not a Twilight Zone ending if
Oh,
you've
yeah.
ever seen one. So it all fits.
Absolutely. No, that is definitely a Twilight Zone ass ending, and you can certainly tell. And I will keep the part about the books in here begrudgingly. Um, we have 2 minutes left. So, final thoughts from either of you. If you got anything else you want to talk about this episode, spit them out now or forever hold your peace.
I just want to shout out quickly. Maya's laugh is so unsettling when she does it.
Oh
It's
God, yeah.
so
Great laugh.
creepy
Very
because
creepy.
it's like almost like when he's walking around the carnival and he's watching her dance. It's like at first I'm like, why is he so creeped out by her? I mean, she's like you said, maybe in the '60s she was a little more exotic, but then when she starts laughing, I'm like, oh yeah, I would be scared of her for sure.
That's so true. It's so
I
true.
I just want to point out that in the late 50s, early 60s, everybody looked way older than they were because at the beginning of the episode, Serling introduces Edward Hall, age 35, whatever his profession is. And I'm sorry, but you look at Richard Conte and he was not 35. I get it, he's an actor, but holy shit.
Yeah, no, he definitely looked like 50s, 60s, man. That guy had been having some bad dreams.
Oh yeah. Hey, he'd been awake for 87 hours. That'll do it to you.
Oh man. All right. Well, we'll put a pin in the conversation there. Unlike Mr. Edward, we are not dead yet, so we need to move on, unfortunately. Barrett, it's now time to talk about your episode.
Ugh. All right, so yeah, my episode was from season 2, episode 17, titled 22. This episode is about a dancer. She's very specific. She's a dancer named Liz Powell, who is recovering in a hospital because she is overworked and tired. And she is having this recurring dream that she wakes up, she reaches for her water and it breaks, and then she hears some footsteps. So she goes out to the hallway. And this is part of what I really like about this episode. I feel like her dream is very, just like in Damon's episode, it's a very horror dream. It's filled with a lot of dread and tension as she's walking down the hallway, and she comes out of a room to follow the footsteps, and she just sees she sees a woman going down an elevator, but the face is totally obstructed. So she follows her, and then she follows her down the elevator, follows her down the next hallway, and then lo and behold, the room that she goes into is the morgue. And then this woman that she's following comes out, and she says, "Room for one more, honey?" And she runs, and then Liz Powell runs away and wakes up from the dream. So she's been having this dream throughout the week that she's been in the hospital, I believe it was 5 days or whatever. And of course, because it's the 60s and she's a woman, no one believes her. and so, and, so there's a lot of dated 60s elements in this episode that made it pretty funny to watch, but they're also
the casual 16 misogyny in this episode is fantastic.
So, but at the core of it, it is all about her nightmare and her trying to break out of this nightmare. And then, lo and behold, in the end, what really made me love the Twilight Zone, because like I said, this is one of the first episodes I ever saw, is you see this all and you're wondering, is it a dream? Because it does seem like it's a dream, and all the misogynistic doctors are telling her it's a dream, but she knows that it's something more, and it turns out that she should trust her gut, because then in the end, in a very Twilight Zone twist, her dream plays out in her real life, but in an airport, which ends up saving her life. So that is what ended up making me pick this episode, because I just think the twists and it it is not a predictable twist in the way that it doesn't really hint to you that that's what's going to happen, but once you've seen it once and you rewatch it, it all makes a lot of sense. So that's why I ended up choosing this one.
Can I just say, speaking of movie inspiration, since we had
Yes,
Nightmare on Elm Street for the last one,
I
we
know
got a
where
little
you're
Final
going.
Destination
Yep,
here, right?
yep.
Oh,
Definitely a
absolutely,
little Final Destination here. Like we got the plane, and like now, but fucking Depp's gonna be haunting her now. She fucked up. She done goofed.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, this is another great episode. Again, I'll tell my thoughts in a bit, but Damon, if you want to go ahead and take it next and give us your overall thoughts on the episode.
It's exactly where I was going to go. It's funny because I know I've seen this episode, and I remember the dream specifically that they were telling her to lucid dream, and she had the dream about the woman down in room 22, and they were freaking out because how would she know that? She's never been down there, blah blah blah. And when she got to the airport, it all hit me like a ton of bricks. I remembered, oh yeah, she watches the plane completely blow up. And so Final Destination keeps coming to, and that's actually one of my I like that franchise.
Me too.
So yeah, right. And it's so much fun. And if they didn't completely just take from this, they're lying. Maybe
Yeah.
Wes Craven was lying, but they're definitely lying.
Shout out from Damon. Are you going to take that Final Destination producers? No, there's definitely got to be some inspiration there for sure. It's way too similar. I mean, can we let's address the elephant in the room though and talk about the misogyny in this episode? Because Jesus, this doctor, man, he's like, oh man, like we're like 2 minutes into the episode after her dream. She's having a nervous breakdown. Looks like she's crying, about to die. He's like, oh man, I wish I was younger, so I had my shot with you, honey. Like, Jesus, dude, where's your bedside manner?
He just has the most skeevy look on his face too the whole time.
Oh yeah,
he just looks like he's just so gross. And I
wouldn't let this doctor anywhere near me.
his fucking smirk.
Yeah, but I also would love that she does not appreciate it, and she also is snarky back to them, which is why I
yeah.
just think it's so entertaining. Like he does that, and then she I wrote it down here. Oh yeah, he like laughs in such a creepy way, and then she's like, "You must be great at funerals, laughing boy."
Oh yeah.
So good.
I just appreciate that she is a strong woman and she does not give a shit about them. She's just like, you know what? You don't believe me, but you should. And at the end of the day, she's right.
Well, and it's interesting too, because I guess by the end of it, like she kind of tricks herself into thinking she was dreaming. At least that's the kind of the rub I get from it, just so she can leave the fucking hospital.
She can leave, yeah.
Yeah, she just wants to get out of there. So at this point, she's just like, all right, you know what? I'm just going to convince myself these are dreams and let's go. And then, of course, that happens at the airport, and she basically has a fucking breakdown at the airport because it wasn't a dream after all. But yeah, it's interesting. Again, very 60s. Like that's probably what you would have to do to get out of there. Otherwise, you'd end up in a straitjacket or a mental institution.
Oh yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't her and I'm when you started explaining her profession, Parrot, I could feel your air quotes.
Yes.
Didn't her air quote agent even slip and say stripper?
Yeah, his name is Barney. I wrote it down. And
Barney,
like, stripper. And she's like, dancer.
I have a note for Barney. That guy has some Chad glasses. I just gotta say, those are some Chad 60s glasses. And shout out to Barney for rocking those.
Those fucking those Buddy Holly glasses made his eyes so big.
I have some couple notes about Barney that maybe are not quite as nice. I wrote, Barney is such a scumbag. Oh my god, because he shows up, he clearly does not care about her. He does not care about her well-being at all.
Oh no.
And then he's like, and then when he tries to leave, and he's trying to leave, and she's just like, I'm not talking to you. And he's like, well, I'm glad you're feeling well, I'm glad you're looking good. And I'm like, oh my god, what a fucking creep.
That dude is a piece of work.
Yeah.
Yeah, shout out Barney or not.
Yeah. And another quote I wrote down from the doctors when she is finally leaving, I got the same vibe you did, where she is just kind of like telling herself, okay, it's dreams, it's nothing but dreams, because she just wants to get out of there and go on with her life, and she doesn't have any other way to get out. So that's also what I got. And so she's leaving, she's packing her things up, and the doctor's like, next time I see you, I'll be ringside. I want a little wink. And then he just laughs so creepy.
Oh, I know, right? Like, God, like the doctor would have been fired like in 10 seconds in today's day and age. But you could literally have a whole Twilight Zone episode alone on this doctor, I feel like. Just like his story and his backstory. It's probably
Yes.
creepier than anything in this episode.
Just a day in his life. I'm in.
Yeah. Yeah. He's the creepiest part about this episode in the modern lens. That's for sure. I did
But
not
yeah,
remember
I
that when I
did think
picked it.
I did think it was funny, and I know we talked about this in the first episode that we talked about, but like I noticed right away that yeah, this is another dream-based episode. So you and Mr. Damon were on the same wavelength here, both going for very similar themes in your episodes. And that's
Yeah.
pretty cool. And I don't know, like again, I've seen every Twilight Zone episode, but it's been a while, so I'd have to do a rewatch of the series, which I'm tempted to do now after these. I love the show so much. But I wonder if dreams were just like a really big prevailing factor throughout the entirety of the show, if they just kind of keep going back to that well, or if you guys just kind of did a little coincidence here.
I'm
Oh, I'm trying to remember. I remember some that do have what I think were they may not have been prevalent, but there had to be like After Hours, I think, and maybe Last Flight. Oh man, I have to go back and watch
Yeah,
them too, though.
there's definitely a few. And then shout out to this episode too, because this was the first. This one had the intro that I recognized. I was like, oh, okay, this is the intro that I kind of remember. Because there's so
Mhm.
many different intros that were used with the Twilight Zone, with different backgrounds and some audio cues and stuff like that. But I think this is the one that's most prevalent to me.
Yeah. I really like in this episode, all the jokes aside, the actual core part with the nightmare, the recurring nightmare is super interesting, and I just find the dream to be really creepy. Like I was describing how you're hearing the footsteps and you see her in the elevator and her face is just totally shadow. It's just such and just the opening the morgue and the woman saying, "There's room for one more, honey," is very eerie, and then I think also it's really interesting. It's really cool how they took that and it fits perfectly in the hospital morgue setting, but it also worked perfectly in the airport.
It feels really like it feels like a realistic dream, doesn't it? Like
Yeah, it
that's why I
does.
kind of like it too. Like it feels like okay, I could absolutely see like do you guys dream at all? Like are you guys dreamers? I'm curious.
I do not a lot, but I do sometimes.
I
Damon?
never remember mine. I
Okay.
never, not anymore. I used to, but not anymore.
Yeah, see, I for a long time I didn't like remember, but lately I've been remembering them again, and it feels very accurate to me how a dream like that would go. Like if you're kind of having these recurring dreams and stuff like that, and it feels very very true to life of what you kind of expect. And I appreciate that part of it. And there's something very creepy about it too. Like there's nothing really like that actress isn't particularly creepy, I don't think. But the
No,
way
No.
they kind of frame it and kind
Mhm.
of do it, she is creepy. Like there's something very creepy about that delivery. Room for one more, honey. Like it's just there's something about the way she says it
Like
that's just
the
it's eerie to
echoey
me.
effect on her voice, I think adds, right? And the very long hallway behind her. Like that just unnerves me for some reason.
agreed. Yeah, it's just a creepy visual, and it's the music, but also just like the silence and just the footsteps in this long creepy hallway is just
Mhm.
something unnerving about that. And I also just like how she is it's not like a time loop story, but it's almost where she is trapped in the same situation, and when she tries to change it, she tries to change the order of it to get out of it, and no matter what she does, like she is trapped in this reality for her.
Oh yeah, yeah, because
And
she tries
Mhm.
like something with that glass, right? The second time or the third time, like she tries to do something different, but she still ends up dropping it, right?
yeah, it's like
Yeah.
no matter what she does to try to change the order, because it always happens sequentially. So she's trying to do something to break the order, and even though she knows she's trying to do that, it still ends up happening. It's just inevitable.
And then it happens in the airport, which is genius, the same order. And then the vase breaks because some woman's just walking with the vase for whatever reason.
Yeah, I wrote a note about that. I just wrote, "She does not apologize," and the woman walks
Yeah,
off.
she doesn't even exactly.
She smashes this
No,
thing, and then the woman just stares at her. She doesn't have a line. She just stares at her, and then just
well,
walks
fuck
away.
my
Like,
vase, I guess. Fuck you. Oh man, yeah, I forgot about that. That's good shit, man. Yeah, they were, the plots were not exactly super realistic. Sometimes they're very hyper focused on what they were trying to tell, and that's fine. We're
yeah,
okay
and they
with
have
that.
a limited amount of time. And
Yeah,
we've
no,
seen what happens when Twilight Zone has too much time. That doesn't go that well either. Like in or
no,
Peel.
Yeah, no, no, the less peel time, the better, honestly. I actually and I that's unfair. I like Nope and Get Out, but,
But
The Twilight Zone was not it. That was certainly not it. Rod Sterling, it was not. Alright, we've got a few minutes left here, so do you guys have any other notes about this episode that you wanted to bring up?
Can I ask how you guys felt about it being shot on video? Did it do anything for you? Did it take away anything? Because the look's very different, and I know they shot, I think 4 or 5 or 6 episodes in a row on video to come back under budget because they were horribly over budget in this season.
Honestly, I didn't even notice, so that's interesting.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, no, that's interesting to me. I did not know that. So no, I guess not.
Okay.
Fair.
Well,
yeah, I was the same. I did read about that though. I read the Wikipedia about about each episode after it, and it was a pretty interesting. I did not notice. I don't have the eye for it.
oh, yeah, I once we picked this, I was watching them online to start. I just kind of started watching through episodes, and I thought, man, why don't I own this? And I actually found a Blu-ray box set online, so I bought it. And when we watched this episode, we watched it on the Blu-ray, and the transfer, the transfer is great. It looks good. All the episodes look good, but I started watching a few, and I caught one before this and this one, and I was like, oh man, they shot on video. It looks better than soap opera, but not as good as film, and that could just be the snob in me. It didn't really take anything away per se because the content, like the story's there, and it's really cool and creepy as shit. But I just remember it kind of sticking out to me, and I was like, oh, I wonder if they caught it. But okay, well, never mind.
Nope, too dumb. But that's interesting now, and I want to
Way too
rewatch it
dumb.
and look for it. By the way, Parrot, you forgot to say your fun fact, so I'm going to
Oh
say it
yeah,
for you for this
yeah, go for
episode.
it.
Barbara Nichols accidentally fell when she was running down the airplane stairs and back on the runway. Although Barbara's fall on the tarmac wasn't in the script, director Jack Smite loved it and kept this shot in.
I can't imagine without it. So it's really interesting when I learned that it was not on purpose. I feel like it makes the whole scene, when the airport, when the airport hostess, whatever it be, the airplane, whatever, she says the room for one more, honey, and she just freaks out and she just falls down the stairs. I feel like that really made it. It really
Oh, I
showcased
agree.
how scary it was for her to realize her dream totally came true.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
smart
it's
Kate.
perfect. It's perfect. Like, yeah, that's interesting that wasn't in the script. I obviously didn't know that. But you can't imagine that shot without it now. It's so iconic. It's great.
A couple quick things. I also really like it. Also is a very eerie atmosphere when she's laying in the bed and it's just silence except for that really loud ticking clock. I find that to be very eerie also.
Oh
And then
yeah.
yes, and she's just laying in the bed and she's like tick 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 tick, and that's all you can hear. Something about that is just very unsettling to me. And then also I think what is so great about this show is just that even though it is so old, it is still 60s stuff aside, it is still at its core very timeless. And I feel like this episode is also that because this story could be told now. I mean, it still touches on the fear of dreams, the fear of the unknown. And yeah, that's what I think is really good about the show and just in general.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say not just your episode, but really all of these episodes, and most of them. I feel like it's timeless. Like they hold up so well today. It's funny. A while back, I binge watched. I don't know if I finished all of it, but I watched a good chunk of it of Alfred Hitchcock Presents.
Hmm.
I don't know if either of you have ever watched that
A
show.
little bit, a little
Oh
Um,
bit of it.
yeah.
and it doesn't hold up quite as well, but it's still
No.
good and definitely an enjoyable show. But it's funny watching then going back to the Twilight Zone here. I'm like, yeah, man, this is just timeless. Like other than these obviously 60s,
Yeah.
misogynistic, it holds up incredibly well. There's really no issues with it. So I always thought that was really cool, and it just goes to show the lasting power of the Twilight Zone and how iconic it really is.
Yeah, like you would never want to do this, but you could just take all the scripts, I bet, or the majority of them, and just update them to modern times. And I think just like the core of the stories would still all work.
Oh, absolutely.
And sadly, the misogynistic part maybe it still works a little bit too. Just maybe not quite as blatant on television.
Right? He'd be a little more coy
Touche.
about it.
Yeah. Maybe just tone
Maybe
down on
not
that a
just
bit.
maybe just not a creepy doctor giggling in her face while she tries to tell him how horrible her life is.
If only I was younger, honey. Oh,
Oh God.
Lord. All right. Do we have any final thoughts on this lovely episode?
Think that's it. Yeah, this was the first episode, one of the first I ever watched, and that's why it always will hold a special place in my heart. I always watch The Twilight Zone with my mom every New Year's Eve. We would just sit there and watch the marathon for the 2 or 3 days, and that's where I really fell in love with the show. So that's what this episode reminds me of.
It's awesome.
That is great. It's a great story. Damon, anything for you, my friend?
Uh, no, yeah, I think we covered it. That's a great guy. That's a great fucking episode. Dreams again.
Yep.
Yeah, dreams are just a great place to go always. There you can do something very interesting in the dreamscape. All right, so we're going to move on to the final episode, and that is mine. It's a Good Life. It's a real good life, a great life. Starring John Larchen, Cloris Leachman, 1964, season 3, episode 8. Fun fact, it contains the longest opening narration of any segment of any episode of the Twilight Zone franchise. And I think it's actually just perfect, this opening narration. It's incredible in my opinion. It's one of the reasons I like this episode so much. So I'm just going to fucking read it. Here we go. Tonight's story on the Twilight Zone is somewhat unique and calls for a different kind of introduction. This, as you may recognize, is a map of the United States, and there's a little town there called Peaksville. On a given morning not too long ago, the rest of the world disappeared, and Peaksville was left all alone. Its inhabitants were never sure whether the world was destroyed, and only Peaksville left untouched, or whether the village had somehow been taken away. There were, on the other hand, sure of one thing: the cause. A monster had arrived in the village. Just by using his mind, he took away the automobiles, the electricity, the machines, because they displeased him, and he moved an entire community back into the Dark Ages. Just by using his mind. Now I'd like to introduce you to some of the people in Peaksville, Ohio. This is Mr. Fremont. It's his farmhouse that the monster resides. This is Mrs. Fremont, and this is Aunt Amy, who probably had more control over the monster in the beginning than almost anyone. But one day she forgot. She began to sing aloud. Now the monster doesn't like singing, so his mind snapped at her, turning her into a smiling, vacant thing you're looking at now. She sings no more. And you know the people in Peaksville, Ohio have to smile. They have to think happy thoughts and say happy things. Because once displeased, the monster can wish them into a cornfield or change them into a grotesque walking horror. This particular monster can read minds, you see. He knows every thought. He can feel every emotion. Oh yes, I did forget something, didn't I? I forgot to introduce you to the monster. This is the monster. His name is Anthony Fremont. He's 6 years old, with a cute little boy face and blue, guileless eyes. When those eyes look at you, you'd better start thinking happy thoughts, because the mind behind them is absolutely in charge. This is the Twilight Zone. And I say all that because it's such a perfect setup for this episode, and it just bleeds into what I think is just one of the creepiest things I still have ever seen on television. The vibe of this is just off the charts for me. You get this kid that's just, I mean, this is probably why I hate kids so much, man. Like, this has got to be definitely part of the fucking reason, man. Like, Sterling, I love your narration, but I disagree with the innocent part. There's nothing innocent looking about this kid. This is a creepy little
No.
bastard. All right. But yeah, like you basically in this episode, it's just this kid that runs this town, and everyone has to think very happy, pleasant thoughts. And if they don't, this kid's a monster and he can do with you as he pleases. And you basically get a slice of life into what it's like living in this town. One guy ends up going crazy and can't take it anymore, and he ends up getting turned into a literal fucking jack in the box and then sent into the cornfield with all the other miscreants. And then at the very end, you get this horrifying shot of basically, he wants it to snow. It's probably a random summer day, and he's like, "Nah, I just want it to snow right now." And the dad's like, "You're gonna ruin all the crops," but it's a real good thing you made it snow. And these people are all just broken, battered, and there's no escape for them. Welcome to the fucking Twilight Zone. But yeah, this is definitely my favorite episode. I think it's great. I have a lot to say on it, but I'll toss it over to you first, Parrot, if you want to give me your thoughts on this episode.
Yeah, I was really struck by that intro also because it really builds up this horrifying monster and you don't know what it is, and then it's just a little kid, and it really just makes you wonder why is he like this, and then it's also just inherently creepy to have a evil child. I think, in my opinion, maybe that's just also someone that never wants children, but something about a creepy evil child is just always unnerving to me. And yeah, this would just be like the most true hell to live in, I feel like. That's one of my biggest takeaways watching this. I just like they all are doing so well acting this out where they are all saying the nice things and you can tell they all just have like facial expressions where they're trying to look happy, but you can tell that they're not. And I think that is what makes this episode really unnerving to watch them all navigate around this landmine that is just this small 6-year-old boy who is clearly a monster, but he's also only 6 years old. So he in some way you could say he doesn't know any better, but he can't be parented to know better because if they try to, he's going to kill them basically. So it's just a vicious cycle that is just making this town a living hell to live in.
It's funny that you mentioned like everyone's doing a good job acting and everything, because one of my notes is, and you guys both know me very well, but having to always be happy and cheerful, I would be the very first person dead in this town. There's no fucking way. I would be dead so fucking quick in this town. So, shout out to being able to keep that facade up, because not a fucking chance for me. Like, there's just no chance.
Oh
Damon,
no.
what do you think of this episode?
I would have done exactly what Don Kiefer does before he gets turned into a Jack in the Box. I would have just instigated this kid and just pissed him off so he would kill me intentionally or wish me away or whatever, because fuck that. This fucking episode is one of the most unnerving things on the planet, aside from the kid who looks just sinister as shit. Not because he's freckled and has red hair. You can't tell he has red hair. It's black and white.
I could fucking tell it bleeds through the black and white.
It definitely does. I was just, yeah, it definitely does. And he has just got a look to him. He's got the missing tooth. He's got the Dennis the Menace overalls and the bowl cut. And it's his stare. He's got piercing eyes that just make you so uneasy. And the sequence where he turns that guy into a literal Jack in the Box, they have that quick cut of his head kind of bouncing, and they frame it so it's under his shoulders. It's really just him wearing a hat, but the way he moves, and I think he's wearing a black shirt under his shoulder because he moves just slightly enough in a frame or two where it looks like his shoulder is cut off, and then it cuts the shadow, and that's the most for 1960, what is 1-2, that is still scarier than half the movies you'll watch today. Just something about it is so like skeevy, and you're right, Parrot, you nailed it, man. Like everybody just looks like they're at their wits end. They're so scared to say the wrong thing. It's in their eyes, it's in their face. The dad is just fucking terrified of his own kid. This was, man, I hadn't seen this one in a while, and as soon as I started getting into it, I went, oh man, like I just all came back. I remembered how just creepy this one is.
Yeah, speaking of like what you're saying, the dad afraid of his own kid, the mom hates her own kid, and it shows like earlier in the episode where I wish we could have seen it, but the kid makes a gopher with 3 heads.
Oh God.
And then she is, and she's talking to, I don't remember what this guy is. Somebody's come to deliver something, and she is basically just hoping. She's like, she's wishing that the animal would have bit him and killed him.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what she's hoping would have happened. She's like, oh, that would have been nice if that could have happened, but it didn't. And then they, at the end, jumping around, they had their chance. The guy's name was Dan. I wrote it down. He's drunk and he gives them a chance. He gives them a chance to end it, but they can't bring themselves to do it. So they also have to now live with knowing they had the perfect opportunity to do it, but they couldn't do it.
It's funny when he yelled, just hit him in the back of the head or something. I was yelling that in my head about 3 minutes before. I was like, just hit this fucking kid.
Yeah, no kidding, eh? It's so well done, and they really do make you like scared of this kid just because of how they frame it and what he does. I will say one of my notes here is that I am a little bit envious of the kid, though. Like I kind of just wish I could wish people away to the cornfield sometimes. I don't know. That seems like a power I would like. Just you go in the cornfield. You're fucking pissing me off right now. Radek, I don't hear about Twisted Metal. Go away for an hour.
You know what? So that explains a lot about your Discord strategy this episode. But,
I Discord the exact same way as this kid, I swear.
That's going to be the new thread on there. It's going to be called the cornfield.
I wrote down, I'm just like thinking about this. Like this kid might be one of the most powerful characters ever created in fiction. He's got so many powers. It seems like I just can't even like. I don't know how you. Other than the fact that he's a kid, I mean, he's lighting people on fire. He removes electricity cards. He's reading minds. He's teleporting people away.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
creating life. He's killing life. He's turning people into monsters. He's making his own television shows. He's changing
With
the weather. I'm like,
dinosaurs
what?
fighting.
Yeah,
Fucking
like
badass television
like
shows.
what can this kid? What can he not do? It's just like, yeah, he's just like he's gonna take over the world at some point.
Yeah, well, and that is an interesting thought. You kind of wonder if like the people in that town are almost just like acting as sacrificial animals because like, all right, we'll keep him contained here so he doesn't take over the rest of the fucking world. Like, I don't know if that's their purpose, but you're right. Like, he could, like, you just feel like he could just take over the world if he wanted to, like in a snap, right? Like, he kind of owns everything. It's very like, I don't know. Have either of you seen the movie Brightburn?
Oh no, I really want to. I like that director. He's a cool guy.
That is
Have
like
you
evil, like Superman-ish
It's
sort of
evil
movie.
Superman, right?
Mhm.
And this
Yeah.
kind of gave me some of those vibes too. It's just like this monster shows up, they on a farm, they raise him, and it's just like kind of like an evil superhero. Like, what if Superman was bad, sort of thing. And Brightburn, it's very much a guilty pleasure. I don't think it's a great movie, but I definitely had fun with it. And definitely reminds me of that in some ways, where you just kind of get this alternate, like, what if this kid had all the superpowers, but he was just a horrible human being?
Yeah, and just creates this very stressful, horrifying place to live in. And also, he turned the guy into a jackbox, whatever. If you know me, as soon as he kills that dog, I'm like, we gotta kill this kid.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I know. I figured that was it for you. Like, you were at that point. You're like, yeah, you don't wish no dog away to the cornfield, buddy. You're dead meat. You're toast.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
I
forgot
do
about
like
that.
yeah,
He doesn't like dogs, or they don't like him, so he doesn't like them.
yeah,
Whatever
and
it
he
is.
has the quote I wrote down in that section. He says, I hate everyone who doesn't like me.
This is like, yeah.
And that's
Oh man,
that's very, very
this
scary to imagine with a kid with this much power doing.
man, that kid is me, man. Like, for real, for real. Here's another note for you. Since we're on the comedic topic, there's always got to be that one drunk at a party, though, eh? And I know it's
Oh
his
yeah.
party, so I know it's his party, so he's probably allowed to. But always got to be the one guy that just has a bit too much to drink. Although this guy, he's it's what is it, a peach whiskey or whatever, and it's like he
Oh,
said there's
peach
only like
brandy.
peach
Yeah.
brandy, and he's like complaining because there's only like a few bottles of liquor left in the entire world. So like that's like obviously
I
back
love
in the 60s, that's a crisis.
I love that that's what broke the straw that broke the camel's back for him was, wait a minute, we've only got 5 bottles of booze left?
I'm pretty sure it's not even the world. I'm pretty sure he says like, "Oh, in this county or something." So it's like, oh,
Yeah.
I mean, I know you don't have a car, but you could walk. You could walk.
No kidding, man. So he's just like, yeah, no, I'm done. I'm out. Peace. Have this little bastard kill me.
With a totally different tone. He'd be the villain of this episode, the drunk guy that picks a fight with a child. But
Right?
Yeah, no, if you just turned on this episode like randomly at that point, you're probably like, oh, what a monster this guy is. Like, leave the kid alone. He just wants to hear a song.
I love that scene. It's like just before that, when he's making that other guy play the piano. It's like
Oh.
I can't imagine have to play the piano in that kind of situation. One mess up, you might get sent to your death, and then that guy's just like drinking and making noise, and it's very stressful. You're like, something is going to happen, but the kid is not reacting quite yet, and it's like, oh my god, is he gonna die here? And it just creates some really, really good tension. I also just
Oh,
love the kid. Where he's like his delivery of the line is like, I don't like any noise when the music's playing. It's like a little gangster.
yeah, you're gonna stop. See, I don't need to hear no music I don't need to hear no
I don't
noise when
know.
my music's playing. See.
Yeah, it's so good. He makes such good facial expressions, that little kid does. He really is just
Oh, they cast a
creepy.
perfect fucking
he's-
kid for that
yeah.
role. Like, they could not have found a better kid for that role. Like, just perfect. By the way, also slightly fun fact, which I don't know if either of you guys know. Did you know this episode actually has a sequel? Apparently, it's fucking horrible. I've never watched it, but this
I've
episode
always
does have a
wanted to.
sequel.
Never watched it either.
Yeah. Apparently, it's
is it
horrible.
It's in what, the 80s show? Is that what
Yeah,
they
like I think it
yeah,
was in
the
one of the
revival
reboots.
they did like in the 90s or something like that, late 80s or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
it's called
'cause
"It's Still a Good Life" or something like that. But yeah, so apparently he's still doing his thing.
And it's his daughter, I think, if I read correctly. And she's more
okay.
so it's his daughter and she's more powerful than him.
Oh man, and he's got like
Jesus
unlimited
Christ.
powers, so I
Yeah,
can't imagine
what
what
could
she's
she do? Like, that's scary.
Yeah, right?
freeze time, turn back the clock. I mean, what else could possibly? I mean, this kid could do everything.
Yeah, I'm definitely like out of morbid curiosity, I'll probably try to watch that one day. I don't know if I've watched any of the 80s Twilight Zone stuff though. It's more just the 60s I've watched, so the classic stuff.
I feel
I've
like I've
watched.
caught a few.
Yeah, I want to say I. At one point, I wanted to try to watch it all, and I probably watched like the first 15, and it was like fine. It just wasn't anything special. I ended up not continuing, but maybe one day I'll go back because I am curious. But now I kind of, like you said earlier, I kind of just want to watch all these again.
Yeah, well, if I'm going for 80s 90s anthology, I'll like I was a guilty pleasure for me was The Outer Limits. I don't know if
Hell, I
either of
was
you guys
just
have seen that one.
yes, hell
So
yeah.
I would just rather watch The Outer Limits because that was really cool shit there.
Mhm.
This has to be one of the most iconic episodes, right? I would
Yeah,
say
I
it's
think
not
this one
the
like
most, but it's up there.
yeah, I definitely out of the three of us, I think I picked the most normie episode for sure. This is up there. I think obviously the what's the name of
Plane,
that fucking
the plane,
the plane episode,
yep,
the Eye of the
Monsters on
Beholder,
Maple.
or,
Oh yeah.
Monsters on Maple, Time Enough at
I'm
Last,
yep.
obviously, Parrot's Horror Story. So there's lots in there that I feel are
I feel like
particularly frightening.
I would have liked for one of us to talk about that because I feel like you must be rooting against that guy because he loves reading so much.
Oh, I am absolutely. The end of the happy ending for me. I'm just like, that sucks to be you.
Okay, I just wanted like since we were talking about iconic episodes, I also just wanted to shout out the Living Doll episode. That's also another
Oh
iconic one.
yeah.
Which one was that again? The
The what is it? Talking Tina, where he gets the doll. It's
Oh,
Chucky.
yes, yes, yes,
It's
yes.
what
It's
Chucky's clearly
basically
based on.
yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
the Chucky, the Chucky
Yep.
inspiration, which I one of my goals for by end of this year is hopefully to watch all the Chucky movies and then maybe not this year, but next year at some point have a Chucky episode. I definitely do want to do that because
Yes.
specifically some of those later ones like the Seed of Chucky and Bride of
Oh
Chucky,
yes.
they look like they're fun. Like they look
They
really fun.
are
So yeah, the type of thing I think I'd be
definitely
into.
definitely have a drink or seven as you watch it, and they're definitely fun.
Well,
Yep.
the only one
I'll
I've
be there for
seen,
that.
the only one I've ever seen is the remake with Aubrey Plaza.
Oh
So
wait, have you never seen the original Child's Play?
no, no, no.
Yeah.
So
Oh.
yeah, so there's definitely some gaps in my horror knowledge, and that's a big one. So I definitely want to go back and watch. Like I said, like I usually don't like to watch through like the entirety of franchises, but I feel with that one of some of those later releases, it'll be worth it. So I feel like I'm going to do that for that one.
Yep.
But we'll
I'll
see.
be. I'll join you for that for sure.
Yeah, no, you're definitely on
Yeah,
that one because I know
those are great.
what a Child's Play fan you are. But perfect. Yeah. So like I said, we got about 5 minutes left. So any other notes for you gentlemen that you wanted to get off your chest?
I don't have a note, but I have a question because I never have seen it. But have either of you seen the Twilight Zone movie? Because isn't this
Mm.
remade in the
Yes.
movie?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I'm curious what it's like. Is it just a one-to-one kind of remake of this, or what is it? I'm just curious.
I
It's been a
don't remember.
while for me since
Yeah,
I've
I know
seen it. So
because they do this and 20 mantra at 20,000 feet or whatever.
yeah, yeah.
Because that's
I
John
think
Lithgow in that one. That's always the one I remember the most. I don't remember
yeah,
this segment
same.
as
It's
well.
it's it's been a while since I've seen it, so I'd have to rewatch it. Unfortunately, probably should have done that before the episode, honestly, because
I
It's a
feel
great,
it's
like
it was
fun.
a fun movie. Yeah.
It's a
I
fun
would like
movie
to
for
see
sure.
it, but I feel like watching this episode it just showcased, like we were saying, how timeless it is. Because I didn't really feel
Oh, for
like
sure.
this episode needs anything done to it.
No,
It's so
out of all
perfect
the
the way it is.
yeah, out of all the episodes, I feel like this one has probably got the least amount of 60s jank to it for sure. And it just holds up incredibly well. Like you could watch this today and still be frightened. So
And to
yeah.
your, it's everything we've been beating over the head about how influential this series is. It's like even obscure episodes are. I mean, this obviously isn't an obscure episode, but you watch any episode, and we've just pulled a bunch of references from Parrots and Mines, and even this one, you see everything from Looper to Chronicle to Brightburn in this, and it's insane how influential these episodes have been for the last 70 something odd years, and to still go in and pull from them. Because I was watching it and I was like, wait a minute, like this whole the cornfield, keeping the kid happy and making sure he doesn't fucking lose his mind, it's Looper. Like this is the little kid with the telekinesis. And then you brought up Brightburn, and it's like you just start thinking of other movies that are like, yeah, they were definitely pulling from this.
I also love the farm setting. That is
Yeah.
so creepy to me always.
Yeah, there's something I don't know. Like if you live like well, you're a Bigfoot believer, right? In general, Paris. So
Yes.
like that's your prime
Yes.
Bigfoot opportunity sightings is probably in the farmlands. So that's like you right there.
Yeah, I just like we keep always saying, "I'm gonna wish you to the cornfield," and I just think that is, I would love to. It's very awesome how in the episode they don't show you what that means. It
Yeah.
could be literal. You don't know what it means. I mean, it could just be, "I'm gonna strike you down, teleport you to your death." Or it could literally be some cornfield somewhere, and then what happens to these people? We don't know because they're also scared of it, so they don't really know either. I guess, right?
It's kind of a horrific thought to think of like just some random person stumbling upon this town, walking through these cornfields and just catching like a guy who's a human jack in the box. You know
Right.
what I mean? So
And
there's
just
something
like
very scary about
like a mountain of bodies and then a human
yeah,
Jack in the Box. And you're like, what the fuck?
and a
Oh
dog.
god.
There's a
and, a,
dog
and a
too.
mountain of dogs. Yeah.
Yeah, some dogs. So
Oh
he doesn't like the
no.
dogs. Parent will
Not the
rescue all the dogs.
oh, no. Yeah, that part pained me because it, like, yelps when he does whatever to it. I'm like, "No,
Oh, I
don't you
know.
do
That was so
that.
sad.
You little kid, slap him. Someone slap him."
So, yeah, someone hit him in the back of the head.
No, no. All right, final thoughts on the episode, boys. We're about to wrap up here. Anything else?
I give it a 5 human Jack in the Boxes out of 5.
It's a great rating.
Ye
And that
Oh
go ahead, Pear.
god. Yeah, so that's a scary visual. I don't think we even need 1, but I guess we're stuck with 5. Yeah, this is definitely the most. I love all the episodes that we talked about today. This is definitely the quintessential episode, I feel.
Oh,
One of the
For
one of
totally.
the
sure.
one of the handful.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I'm going to stop the timer there a little bit early, but that's okay. We had a great conversation today about 3 really fantastic Twilight Zone episodes. You can't go wrong with any of them or with most of the series. So, go ahead, give it a watch, and let us know what you think. We do have a YouTube channel over at An Hour to Kill, so you're free to comment there. Probably going to set up a Twitter soon when I stop being lazy. Who knows? Demon, DB, blah, blah, blah. Damon, DB, do you have any final thoughts for today?
I actually thank you, Parrot, for coming on, man. This was such a cool topic, and it's just fun having another Twilight Zone fan on. And if anybody is, hasn't listened yet, I'm just going to pimp you a little bit, but listen to Parrot's other podcast. Backlog brain rot
Yeah.
as a tongue twister. It's him and 2 other friends, really cool dudes, and it's a fun show. I listen to it, and yeah, just throwing it out there for anybody who's got another hour to kill beyond this one. Listen to that.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I was really excited to be on. I really enjoyed listening to your guys' show. I mean, horror is one of my favorite things. So, anytime I could be on, I would love to be back. And maybe we can sneak a couple of more Twilight Zone topics in sometime. Because I mean, we talked about 3 episodes, and how many are there? 150
Oh,
something. So
153 to go.
yeah,
yeah,
we could probably talk about. Oh, we could talk about it all the time. I love talking about this show, especially with
absolutely.
you two.
No,
It's very fun.
this will definitely not be the last time Parrot is on. I promise you that he will be back on the show for sure. And yeah, definitely check out Backlog Brain Rot. I don't listen to a lot of podcasts honestly these days, but that is one I try to make the time for because it is very enjoyable and it comes
Appreciate
highly
it.
recommended from me. Parrot, anything else? Final thoughts for yourself? Was that it?
No, that's it.
That's it.
Yeah, check out our
Stellar.
show, and yeah, I'm excited to be on again one day and talk some more horror.
Fantastic. All right. Well, from everyone here at An Hour to Kill Productions, I don't know why I just said that. You all have a wonderful evening and try to stay out of the cornfield, shall you? Bye-bye.
See
Bye.
ya.